community in every nation and region. And it's great to have you all here today. So for our final webinar, I'm delighted to welcome Rimi Thapar to join us this morning. Welcome, Rimi.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on the webinar. So nice to be here.
If you don't mind, I'm going to tell people about you. We'll learn far more later. So Rimi is a passionate and hardworking entrepreneur and mumpreneur, spearheading the growth and success of the innovative vegan chocolate brand LoveRaw. She's on a mission to make legendary vegan chocolate that tastes like chocolate while maintaining her honest, transparent, and no artificial nonsense roots. In launching LoveRaw in 2013, like many other people, from a kitchen table, with a startup budget of, I can't believe this, only £600, she's gone on to sell millions of vegan chocolate bars despite turning down a £50,000 investment from Deborah Meaden on Dragon's Den. And I'm sure we'll discuss that later, because that's an interesting thing to have done. So she's now secured a multi-million-pound investment from Blue Horizon Ventures in 2020, and now it's gone on to launch new product ranges, including their very own vegan milk choc bars and the world's first cream wafer bar range. Vegan, I'm assuming. So Rimi's on track to succeed in mission, disrupt the category, and make LoveRaw the go-to vegan choice for indulgent chocolate treats. And as Christmas is coming up, I'm sure vegan chocolate bars will be on the shopping lists of many mums across the UK. So welcome, Rimi. It's really great to have you here. I think we were tucking into burgers the last time we met in Bristol, wasn't it? Is that correct, if I remember?
Yes, it was at the awards evening.
That's it, at the Southwest Awards. So
tacos.
You were tacos.
Very
I think I'm
one.
having dirty burger. There we go. So I'm really fascinated by this. This is a brilliant startup story from the kitchen table to a multi-million-pound business. So could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah.
You got this point of starting the business and your entrepreneurial journey since then.
Yeah. So I'll go way back. I mean, going back, my parents were both entrepreneurs. My mum was in the textile trade and had a factory kind of making garments for kind of the high street. And my dad had, a kind of a newsagent shop. But it's funny because my parents never really encouraged me to be an entrepreneur. They encouraged kind of me to go the other way. They emphasized, academics and, said, go to university and get a good degree and get a job where you have the security, because, as you know, being an entrepreneur is so up and down. And, it was a struggle for them, especially when, with my mum, the textile industry all went abroad in kind of the 90s. So kind of she had to close her business down. So I think what my parents wanted for me was kind of a safe, stable future, which I did have. I graduated in economics and went on to work in investment banking and had that safe job, and at the time I thought I enjoyed it, but I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I came across it, very much, I guess I always say a series of life events kind of led me to that moment. I met my husband and he was living in Spain. And at that time he said, look, I can't move back to England because I've got my business in Spain. So I said, made a very bold move as to leave my career in London, but, to set off and find a job in Spain. And I couldn't find one. And then unfortunately, my dad was quite ill at the time. He had brain hemorrhage. So I, was going back and forth from the UK, and then unfortunately he passed away. And that made me, I just moved to a new country with no friends, no support network. And, I was in a dark place. So it took me a while to get out of there. But one thing that got me out was going to these farmers markets, nestled, in these little villages, near Malaga. And, they'd pick produce 4 o'clock in the morning. And it was just a nice community feel. And that just made me feel mentally good and physically good. And then it just spiraled. I thought, I'm going to give up dairy and give up meat. And then there was a lack of premium, great tasting vegan snacks on the market. So that's kind of where it entered. I used to make these snacks and I thought I'll take them to market, you know, and gave them to family and friends. So tried to set up the business in Spain. It was too bureaucratic. So my in-laws, you know, who are based in Manchester, Altrincham, said, just move back to the UK, you know, because there's a lot of support in the UK for entrepreneurs, for cottage industries. Whereas in Spain, I'd have to spend 20,000 euros renting, you know, a commercial property, getting certified before I could even make anything. But the UK, I can, you know, adjust some things at home, get certified by my local council. I got certified by the Soil Association, and within 2 weeks, I was ready to go. So you can see, I never really set out to become an entrepreneur. And even then, I just wanted to supply the local deli on the high street. I thought, if I can do that, I'm happy. But yeah, instead, sorry, go on.
So what was the trigger for this? I mean, like you said, you started off, you're doing this on your kitchen table and you're making the snacks for yourself. And I remember this lovely story. We're going back 25, 30 years. A good friend of mine did the same. She was making pate, and it ended up being this amazing pate company in North Wales that, you know, was award winning, was great, but it essentially started making pate in the kitchen. And then that came. What was the step from there? Because you could have just said, oh, I'll just do this. Was it because people were saying, make me more, I need more of this, and my friends wanted, and there's a business here?
What? It's funny because I was literally just going to make a few samples and supply the local deli, like locally to where I am in Altrincham up north. But a friend came over and he said, who is or would be your ideal retailer? And I said, Whole Foods, because I loved Whole Foods. They have like 6, 7 in London. And he said, well, why not go straight to Whole Foods? And I looked at him and I was like, crazy, like I can't just go straight to Whole Foods. And then after about a day later, I thought, actually, he's right. Why can't I just go to Whole Foods? So, and at that point, I hadn't started making them. I just made a few samples with sample packaging that I bought from Alibaba, and then got a train ticket to London, because he, you know, like buyers say, email me, send me samples, but I was very impatient. So I took a kind of train journey to London, and I said I had a meeting and I hadn't, and then just presented him with the samples in 2 minutes because I knew he'd be a little bit annoyed that I just turned up without a meeting. But thankfully he was quite, you know, he received them quite well. And 2 weeks later, he called me and he said, look, we really like them and the team like them. I'm going to make an order for 500 units. And I said, what, 500 bars? And he's like, no, 500 cases. So about, you know, thousands of bars. And I hadn't had a commercial blender. I hadn't bought ingredients. So that was it. And he was like, can you send me the order in like 3 weeks? And I was like, yes, I will. So that's where it started.
Did you have to buy a bigger kitchen table then?
No, you know, what I'd done within the garage, because it was organic at that time, I'd had to keep everything separate from the kitchen. So I'd set up this small room within the garage, which had a window looking into the garage, not even looking outside, but it was like a utility kitchen basically. And we just literally used to churn out. I mean, we started off making a few hundred bars, but by about month 8, we were making about 2,500 bars in that kitchen. Yeah. Before we moved on to a commercial kind of contract manufacturer.
And I was going to ask you that question. That is always the challenge, isn't it? You get to that tipping point when you're an entrepreneur where you can fulfill the initial orders, but then you've got that choice about that investment somewhere else to go actually and say, right, I can't do this in my little room in the garage. I've got to contract somebody else to do it. How about that thought process? How difficult was that for you to make that? Because it's a big leap for you, isn't it? From being, shall we say, an artisan specialist, thinking I'm going to take over the world and get everybody else to manufacture it for me.
The funny thing is, another kind of, I didn't have a mentor as such, but one of my father-in-law's friends who was living in Spain when I had the initial idea, I kind of put it forward to him. I said, I'm going to make the bars. And because all of the factories that I contacted said, no, we're not making them for you. You've got no presence. You've got, your minimum order quantities are too low. And they were just like, no, you're a small fish. So I was determined, and I said, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to make them. I'm going to do the sales. I'm going to do the marketing. And I always remember to this day, he always said, you can't do it. You can't do it all. And I was like, no, I will, because I guess the stubbornness in me, I thought, I could do it. But you do get to a point where you struggle and there's a trade-off and something has to give, because I was too much in the business making the bars, and then I didn't get time to do sales, getting out there to other retailers and market the product. Your product's there sitting on shelf, but you need to move it. So, and then thankfully at that point we were meeting minimum order quantity, so I could go back to those factories and say, well, hi, I'm back again, and I'm meeting those quantities, so can you take me on? And then it's just about finding a partner that shares the same kind of integrity as, to try and retain the integrity of the product. So about 8-9 months later, we did kind of move, and that allowed me to focus solely on the business, in distributing, in, doing the operations, but not having to make the product. And I think that was kind of the tipping point where it did kind of grow. We did have that growth.
And what do you think have been key factors in the success of your business to date?
I'd say pivoting as a business, that has really, really been, I think, the key. If we're not selling the same product as what we started off doing. We started off doing cold pressed raw bars made out of fruits and nuts, and we were vegan, and we were dairy free, and we were gluten free, and no refined sugar free, and it was just too much. We've evolved a lot, and you can't hang on to get too personal with your product. If something's not working, you've got to change it. So don't be so protective and precious over your products. Change it up, kind of see what consumer demands and consumer trends are. So, we after those bars, we did powders, superfood powders, and we did almond drinks, and they were great innovative products, but we didn't know enough about the food and drink industry to kind of drive that forward. And I think after about 5 years, we'd kind of learned from our mistakes, and then we'd launched our indulgent plant-based chocolate category, which just flew. We introduced it in 2018, and then we had a tough decision. When the chocolate is maybe about 70% of our kind of turnover, and 30% were the initial products that we started the business with, we just thought, we're going to delist those other products, and we're just going to focus on the chocolate. So had we not done that, I don't think we'd have survived. But sometimes it is hard, because as an entrepreneur, you are protective over the product that you've launched and you've created, but you have to kind of move on.
Yeah, like obviously Steve Jobs did from the Apple II to the Apple Mac. So you're in good company.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. No, definitely.
I'm fascinated to understand, because obviously you started the initial products from obviously your love of what you wanted to do, and you didn't feel there was anything out there for you. Now, hopefully we all love chocolate, particularly coming up to Christmas. How did you identify that? Was it because you had customer feedback, or did you go out there and do market research? I mean, I'm really interested in this, because some entrepreneurs just have an idea and they drive it forwards. Others identify an opportunity and then say, right, I will fill that need, that opportunity. Yeah. So how did you do this? Was it a mix of two, or how did you do it?
You know what, this might surprise you, but it was a gut feeling. And right. It kind of goes against what you should do, because then you think you should maybe check consumer demand and trends, and in our field, have a look at the category data, have a look what's kind of driving forward and going that. But then more often than not, that data is available to everyone. So, it's, will you be entering a crowded market? I was very much a customer of my own product. I tried to solve a problem. There was a lack of premium, healthy products out there, so I created it. So I knew that there was, in the indulgent chocolate category, there's other competitors, and they created these healthy products, and it says, oh, we taste great, and it's a replacement for your chocolate bar, but it's not. It didn't taste great. So I thought, if I can just nail a chocolate that tastes good and indulgent, that doesn't taste like cardboard, that really kind of like you mentioned to me, you hadn't tasted vegan chocolate before, but once you did, you tasted it and you kind of realized how good it tasted. That's what I wanted to create. So I think first and foremost, I just went with my gut. And I was solving another problem for myself. And then, subsequently now we do have a look at category data. But I feel like we've established ourselves a little bit more in the industry now. But it all started off with a hunch and a gut feeling.
Literally a gut feeling, as they say in this case.
Yes.
Or you're going to say, I just love chocolate and I just wanted to make my own.
Yeah.
So I mentioned, and we've seen it on the TV. I am fascinated because I have friends who've been on Dragon's Den, and I'm fascinated to know about the experience. But of course, the whole point about going on Dragon's Den, well, the whole point initially obviously is to get the investment, but also to publicize your products or what you're offering as a service. So you actually turned down an investment from Deborah Meaden, and she for 30% of your business. Tell us about that. I'd love to know about the experience of Dragon's Den, but also, why at that point where you were actually offered the cash, you went, nah, it's not for me.
Yeah, it's, we are Manchester based, and, they are based up north as well. So they'd reached out a couple of times. One year we were just too busy, and the following year we thought, why not? It's getting out there to 4 million viewers. So I just went for the audition, and I passed the audition. And I think they like food and drink companies as well. I think out of everything they present, I think that's the one industry that gets the most traction from the Dragons. But on the day, it's very tense. You have to get there first thing in the morning, like 7 o'clock. You're in a green room with all the other kind of, I guess, you're not a contestant. Well, entrepreneurs. Yeah. You're in there with everybody, just waiting to get called. So you don't know when you're going to get called. So you're there practicing your pitch over and over. And it's very, very nervous. You don't meet the Dragons. And then, I was called a couple of hours into it, and that's it. I was literally kind of thrown into the Dragons. It's very tense. They want to make good TV. So, it's all very kind of, stern faces while you're presenting. And, I presented the products. I was in there for about an hour, and that was edited down to 10 minutes. So it does get tiring towards the end, and we had various questions, but Deborah understood the vision and she understood what we were trying to do. I feel like as a Dragon, she's probably the most progressive.
Of course.
And and when she said 30%, and when we were offering, 5, it was just a no-brainer. There was no way, when I go back into the early days of, working those 18-hour days, we're not giving away almost a third of the company. And they want a deal as well. So it just didn't, again, my gut feeling, it just didn't feel right. So we just politely declined. And then off the back, as soon as I left the den, I was just very emotional, and I just kind of broke down in tears. I think just because it was emotionally draining, and in a way, you're being interrogated about your business that you're quite protective about, and you're there fighting for your business. And then you have to kind of hear all this kind of negative feedback. So I think that just, I am quite an emotional person, and it did upset me. So I just broke down and had a bit of a break after that. And then I felt a bit nervous between the filming and airing, because it was a good 9 months, 10 months. So yeah, but then, it's TV, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt, but the pitch wasn't too bad, how it aired.
Yeah, and did anybody say to you, "Oh my God, you made a massive mistake by not taking the deal that was offered," or did everybody say, "Actually, I think it was best that you"?
No, everybody, yeah, the latter for sure. Like, it was good that you didn't take it, and we're glad. Yeah.
I'm sure Deborah Meaden isn't, considering that, look what's happened to the business since you were on the program. But I mean, it's great. You've expanded internationally, and your most recent listing is in Tesco. I do want to talk about, this challenge that we have a lot of people with consumer products who are out there trying to get into stores, and I want to talk about that. But before we go into that, I am fascinated about this issue about internationalization, because very few businesses, never mind new businesses, actually trade internationally. And of course, you started trading internationally after we'd left Europe, which obviously had its own challenges. So tell us about that process of, obviously you were dealing with businesses in Britain to begin with, and then you've decided to go abroad. Has that been particularly difficult for you?
We were trading with Europe before Brexit as well. So, and it's been very organic, since Whole Foods, I think, because we were in a prime retailer, we had a lot of inquiries, very organic inquiries from retailers and distributors in Europe. So we never said no. So we always serviced those distributors. And then, it has been trickier after Brexit, I guess, lucky for us, we're a plant-based product. So, it's not kind of meat-based, but there's more kind of a bit more red tape in terms of paperwork and certification, and kind of working, with kind of third-party kind of providers to get, your stock over. And pricing, that hasn't kind of been on our kind of side either. So I think it's made the product more kind of expensive abroad, but there's still a demand for it. And we have kind of grown internationally. We export to about 20 countries now, and we've got great presence in, France, Germany, Holland, and Australia, funnily enough, on the other side. They've got a kind of a big culture with plant-based. So we're doing kind of a push on that side. So we're not letting kind of Brexit stop us. It's just made it a little bit trickier, but it's still very much doable.
Good. I mean, and that's great, because obviously it is relatively easy to build your business in your own country, and it's not been as difficult as many people expect. So hopefully on the back of that, you might actually now start thinking, well, why aren't I exporting my products or services? Because it is possible to do it, isn't it? And it's possible.
And saying that is our priority. Our goal is to become, a national brand, and that's, what we're aiming for. But, we've organically grown, in our kind of in the export market. So it's only recently we've got a dedicated salesperson for international, so we can hopefully focus on both things.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was, obviously, you said you went to Whole Foods to begin with, and now you've just had the Tesco listing. Has it become more difficult for you to get into the main sort of supermarkets and chains as you've developed, or has it become relatively easier?
No, it's become, well, we'd always tried to get in with the grocers, and we'd got into a couple of them with our previous products, like the almond drinks, but it's a very competitive market within snacking. And then in our space, it's a little bit tricky, because it's very subjective as to where the product belongs. So maybe one buyer would think it belongs in Free From, whereas another buyer would say, no, it belongs in the impulse section, you know, where all the other chocolates are. But we're in no man's land because, you know, we're plant-based and we're dairy-free, but we're made in a facility that handles dairy. So we can't be in free from as such. But then some buyers say, no, you don't belong with the other heritage chocolate brands. So that, and then it also depends on the buyer. You know, if the buyer believes in your vision and sees what you're doing, then, you know, you can get in there. And our goal was always to sit alongside heritage chocolate brands such as Mondelez, Cadbury's, Ferrero. That's where we believe that we sat, because we taste just as good as them, and the consumer should have a choice over kind of what they purchase. So, and that's where we sit currently in Tesco. So it's been hard, and it's timing. It's coming across the right buyer at the right time that believes your vision, that takes you on. But it's been a long time coming. We've tried for years to get into the grocers. So it's finally happened, you know, and we've been going for 9 years.
And what point are they taking your product? Is there a specific reason? Is it because it's different to everybody else, or does it fit in with their product range, or does that differ across, as you mentioned, across the stores?
You know what's funny? They don't really give you a reason as to why. I think they like the product. They like the product as it tastes, like what it tastes like. And to a certain, you know, reading in between the lines, you know, there's a big demand for plant-based chocolate. So I think it's giving their consumers more of a choice as to what's on offer to have, because we're in with the meal deal. So you have like, you know, thousands, if not millions of people going, you know, to buy these meal deals. So I think they're giving them more choice and variety. And to a certain extent, they have data to see what's kind of trending and whatnot. So I think they're recognizing that there is a demand for plant-based, and that's why we're there.
And also, you're in a growing market. I remember, I was looking back at, it's nearly 5 years ago, I wrote a column on the growth of the potential growth of the vegan market in the UK. That was 5 years ago. And it was, then it was, people were starting to appreciate that people's choices had changed, people's tastes had changed. People, even though they didn't want to go full vegan, were looking for vegan options. And of course, the supermarkets were not in any way, shape, or form actually serving this market. But now, become a major market in itself. So you, to an extent, I wouldn't say it's being the right place at the right time, but it could have been. But you've ridden that wave really successfully, because I know of various vegan products that didn't actually get there in the way you have.
Yeah, it's been tough. I mean, with everything that's been going on the last few years, like I said earlier, we've had to kind of pivot. We've had to bring things forward, you know, with COVID. You know, we've had competitor brands which haven't survived in the climate, you know, post-COVID. You know, and I think post-COVID, a lot of supermarkets are rationalizing their offering. So rather than taking more brands on, they're actually cutting down their range. So it's, you know, with COVID, our sales kind of just dived off a cliff literally overnight. We had to kind of change up our strategy, try and get more into convenience. And we went into supermarkets then, and that's where everybody was going. All the independent shops were closed. So our rate of sale just kind of dropped. So we were trying to get into more, you know, like Londis and Budgeons, you know, convenience shops where people were shopping as well. So it took a few months, but, you know, that really helped us. And then we grew our business kind of direct to consumer. And I think that was a key point during kind of COVID. And we were quite early to do that. I mean, by the end of it, I think most companies were online, but we did that early. And that helped in sales, but it really helped with brand exposure. Whereas, you know, we found our brand exposure and brand recognition with consumers really grew after that. So, so that helped. And I think it's more of a movement now with plant-based, you know, where you've had, you know, other types of diets. Do you remember the Atkins diet? The
Yeah.
Atkins diet,
Just
came across.
No, that's all it was. You just ate bacon all day. So
yeah, it's like protein.
protein.
And then you had like paleo, and right now we're going through like keto and things like that. But I found with these types of they're trends, and especially superfoods, we were in that category of superfoods, and it peaked and then it declined. But I feel like with plant-based, it's a movement, and it's kind of here to stay. It's only gaining more and more kind of traction year on year. I mean, even veganuary isn't really a thing now, because so many consumers are just continuing to be in and out of vegan, and being flexitarian throughout the year, not just veganuary.
And like I say, it has become mainstream also because as supermarkets have started buying these products from companies like yours, because they weren't there before, and you've provided that service for them. And if I wanted to buy something that wasn't there, then I couldn't buy it. And now, like I was pricing 5 years ago when it was all starting, and now it's become, I dare say, vegan has become mainstream. It is a mainstream food choice now, is it not? Like choosing, whether to say buy Italian food or Vietnamese food. It's become a food brand in itself, isn't it? For the right choice. Well,
you go to Waitrose and Tesco and Sainsbury's, and in the chilled aisles, you will come across a section where it's just all plant-based products, and that was not there a couple of years ago. That didn't even exist. You wouldn't have been able to find it. So I guess it's positive for us, and luckily, like you say, we have kind of ridden that wave and we've survived, and that's it. It's a key thing. We've survived.
And of course, with science advancing now, what we're seeing is the move away for meat substitutes through plant-based innovation, which is an incredible thing. That, and I remember, actually having a vegan Big Mac, and it tasted exactly the same.
I never got to try the vegan Big Mac.
It was here in Cardiff. It was a local entrepreneur who'd set up his own restaurant and was making these substitutes. And I tell you, it tasted exactly the same. It was incredible.
I mean, I've got friends that, like we go to Honest Burger, and I mean, they're meat eaters, but they will get the plant-based burger just because they prefer the taste of the burger.
So basically, obviously, you set up this business with your ideas, and you talked about your mum and dad having their own business. My parents had their own business as well, and I became an academic, and you went down the banking route. It's fascinating where how people's careers develop. But I mean, who inspired? Did your mum and dad inspire you on your entrepreneurial journey at all? Look to their example.
My mum, and I guess my dad's as well, but I think my mum more so, has always worked really hard. There were like there's three of us. She had 3 children, but she worked kind of like 6 days a week, and I think she was more of an inspiration to me. I'm quite a hard worker, so I think I get that from my mum. But had I looked at them really and thought I want to do what they're doing, probably not, because I did see them struggle. I did see that that side of entrepreneurism where it is hard, and especially in the downturn of the textile industry, where my mum had to close the factory, her textile factory. So, but the hard work and the ethics I've definitely kind of picked up from them, and I never set out to be an entrepreneur. Whereas my husband joined the business, 3 years in, when I was pregnant with my first child. He has come from a background where he always knew that he didn't want to work for someone else. His dad was an entrepreneur. So he encouraged me to kind of take that route. So I think that helped. But I never envisaged kind of being where I am today.
And maybe you have to be careful this question because I sometimes have to be careful as well. But what's it like working with your partner in the business? How do you say everything that you? I'm not going to ask what you talk about in bed every night, but you understand what I mean.
Yeah. Work comes home with us. There's no rules like, oh no, if we come home we can't talk about work. Like, no, it's actually, if we didn't work together, I don't know what we'd talk about. I don't know, but it's tricky. I think it's taken us a while, but we've both found our own roles at work and our own kind of functions. Like he deals more with the business development side, the operations and sales, and I will touch more on the new product development and the marketing. So in the early days we used to bicker a lot, but we have Juliet from Grenade as a non-exec director, so she's the voice of reason. So if we are bickering over something, then we kind of go to her. But to a certain extent now, the business is its own beast in a way, and you know what's best for the business. So you don't have to say, no, I think this or I think that. It's like the business has its own identity in its own right, and you know how to drive it forward.
And you mentioned Juliet Barrett there, obviously the co-founder of Grenade, in the same industry, in the same sector, in the same segment, and obviously Juliet had gone through obviously a lot of what you have and are going through now. So how did you go about finding a mentor like Juliet? Because I mean, did you think you had to, or what were the reasons for doing so?
You know what's funny? Juliet just came about very much serendipitously. Like, it was very much by chance. She was introduced by one of our long-term suppliers who used to supply Grenade, and she'd just stepped away from the day-to-day, and they said, look, she's just out there and helping various companies, so we'll put you in touch. So we had a conversation, and she was like, okay, next time I'm kind of up north, I'll let you know. And then we just hit it off straight away. I think she understood what we were trying to do, but she saw kind of a lot maybe of kind of learnings that she had discovered whilst growing Grenade. So and we didn't kind of set out for her to be a mentor. It very much kind of happened organically. Kind of, we just met over coffee, and then it was, okay, I'll just help you out a little bit here and there. And then she just by chance moved up to the north of England, like close by, and she's just enjoyed working with us, and vice versa. We've loved having her on board. So now, she is very much a mentor, but it's really kind of helped. I think it's really kind of helped us grow and accelerate the business, and make the right decisions. As she's discovered over the last kind of 10 years of creating Grenade. So if you have the opportunity to get a mentor, I would definitely recommend that. It really, and the right mentor, like you say, it should be someone that's in the same industry, but also someone quite current, not someone that's done it 10 years ago, because everything is so kind of, it evolves and kind of fast changing. So try and get someone that's done it, but kind of currently done it, or currently in it.
And was it important for you to find a female mentor?
Not really. I guess, to be honest, I think, like I said, it was very kind of serendipitous how we met, and it was just by chance. But I enjoy kind of having a female mentor. I think it's just a different kind of dynamic on things. Yeah.
So we talked about vegan chocolate. Now, if you'd have said vegan chocolate to somebody a few years ago, they would have gone, ugh, basically. Yeah. They would have thought it tasted of carrot, something like that. But or cabbage or something like that. But but now it's become, as we discussed, it's become very popular. I mean, do you as a business did you feel that you had to educate non-vegans about the taste, and that this is as good as any other chocolate. I mean, did you have to play that role, or did you just let the growing sort of interest in veganism sort of help you?
Yeah, I feel like we had to really get the product out there. And we're still on that journey. We're still on that kind of that mission. And really, it's as simple as consumers just trying the product. So we're doing kind of a lot of, sampling, out in the streets, just giving out free samples, as marketing now that we're in Tesco, doing tastings. So we're, and our proposition is that we're plant-based chocolate that tastes just as good as chocolate that's on the shelf, your heritage chocolate. So that's the kind of messaging in our marketing that we're trying to get across.
And I can assure you it is. I've tasted it many times, and it is as good. And I went to Switzerland this weekend, the home of chocolates, obviously. So I can tell you it is as good as certain Swiss brands.
Oh, amazing.
You haven't paid me for this yet. Anyway.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
So the other thing you've done is you've recently become a B Corp certified business.
Yes.
Business I'm chairman of. We've been a B Corp for a number of years. It's driven our strategy and our approach to business. So has that changed your approach to responsible sort of business, or was it always then, and this is just a way of letting the community know that you're serious about it?
I think it's always been very important to us, kind of our ethics and our working environment and our sustainable practices. It's always been a thing, and I feel like B Corp just validates that. It's fantastic to be B Corp certified. It's taken us a while, 18 months. It's it's a lengthy process, but a process that's well worth it. And we're proud to now, because before we would say, we're sustainable, and we'd kind of communicate the different practices that we do, but I feel like now we can just say we're B Corp, and we don't have to kind of go into things too much, because I guess the wider consumers kind of know what B Corp stands for.
And the badge is there, isn't it? It's that badge to show that.
Yeah.
It's looking forward as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially being in our industry, with chocolate, where it is a bit controversial in, the practices and how it's picked and how it's grown and the farmers. So, we go way back, to the farmers, and, try and do the right thing in terms of practices, of how much the farmer gets paid, avoiding child slavery, and again, we've got a team of about 20 now, but employing people responsibly and taking care of them, and making sure they're in a good working atmosphere where they enjoy it, and mental health, and working with the right suppliers. So there's so many facets of kind of B Corp. Yeah, so it's been really beneficial.
Excellent, good. I'm gonna jump into a couple of questions here that we've had from people online.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start with Luke's question. Luke's asking, what do you think are the 3 most important habits to be successful?
I think it's God, that's a good question. You see this everywhere, but I think consistency is good. I think focus is another one. I think keeping that focus going, because once you get that focus and you get momentum in what you're doing, you can't drop the ball. And sometimes you can get a little bit lax, but what we found is there's a little bit of a sacrifice or a trade-off that you have to make. We're very focused on the business, and I've got 3 children as well. So it's just work and the children, but we remain kind of focused on both points. So I think it's consistency, I think it's focus, and I think hard work. I think just you're putting the work in. I think nothing is going to happen. Things happen by chance, and sometimes it's timing, but you've really got to kind of push things forward and just work your socks off, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's all well and good to have, as you say, to be in the right place in the right time, but you've got to work hard to get to that position, haven't you?
Yeah, you know what? It's not all this getting up at 6 o'clock and meditating for 20 minutes, although I would love to do that. But, chances are someone's woken me up at like 2 o'clock to take them to the toilet, and one's crying, needs to be settled. So I try and, do all of these typical things that will set you off on a right day, set you off on, a good day. But I think it's definitely hard work, focus, and consistency.
Okay, we've got an anonymous attendee saying that they have an idea or two, but basically finding where to start is the hardest place. What things did you make sure were in place to get going right at the beginning of your business?
You know what? I've had this conversation with quite a few people, and sometimes you can be one of those armchair philosophers where you can sit there and research and have a look at data and do all of the research beforehand, but not get started.
Yeah.
And sometimes you've just got to get started and see where it takes you, because initially you may do kind of all the homework, and then once you start it, discover it doesn't work, for some reason or another. But depending on the industry that you are in, either if you've got a gut feeling, maybe go with your gut feeling. If you're a little bit risk averse, try and back that up with data in your category. Try and buy some data, or try and, you can sometimes download data kind of for free. So yeah, back up your idea, but just get started. Start small. Do focus groups.
And that's the aim, isn't it? If you've got an idea, just get out there, do it. Get something out to customers to get that feedback.
Yeah.
And see how it works. And you obviously did that, and it's been an enormous success for you.
Yeah, there's nothing like practical experience.
I've got another question from Chelsea McCullough. This is about, we haven't discussed this actually, but I'm sure it's in place. It's about your online presence. So what strategies did LoveRaw use to increase your online presence and establish yourself in the marketplace?
I'll be honest, before COVID hit, we didn't have a lot of online presence. It's not something that we focused on, because our product is something impulse that we want someone to buy kind of impulsively when they're doing their shopping. But then we started selling cases, and we have now focused definitely more online. I mean, I guess there's a number of industries which are more popular to buy online, but food, I guess, is less so. But we still have good presence, and we have grown that over COVID. So we have a digital marketer that we focus on, Facebook ads and social ads, and we have our own newsletter. So, and all building up your subscribers. So building up kind of that loyal base of customers where that you're going to kind of get purchases from. So I think that's what's been important to us. And more often than not, the consumers that purchase from us have already tried our product, and they're buying the cases because they want a consistent supply at home. So I guess it really depends on the industry.
Yeah. And it's difficult, obviously, being an entrepreneur today. Hannah Awang has asked, maybe from your experience or experience of others, and I'm sure she's asking this about herself, is how would you deal with imposter syndrome when starting a business?
I think you are going to have a lot of self-doubt, but they do say, a lot in being an entrepreneur is your mindset and, how you place yourself forward. So I think you need to kind of just believe in yourself. You're not going to know everything, and you're still learning from various people, maybe in your industry or mentors, but you're not meant to know everything. And that is what an entrepreneur is. You're still kind of learning every day, but you need to kind of get past that and just learn and grow and have, you know, a growth mindset. But I've had imposter syndrome, you know, where, you know, I've been asked to do, you know, certain talks, and I'm like, well, why do they want to talk to me? Like, what value am I going to add? But then, you know, at the end of it, I feel good because I've helped other people, and I feel like, yeah, you know what, I wasn't an imposter in that sense. So I think just go with it and just put that little voice in a box to the back of your head.
And your role now, what's your current role in the business? You said that yourself and your husband were doing quite different things, but what's your day-to-day look like? And what's a day in the life of Rimi Thapar?
A day in the life. I feel like I've run a marathon before I've even started work, to be honest, with the children. So I've got to kind of get them ready, get them fed, get them to nursery and school, and then say come to work. And more, I think every day is quite different. Like, so for example, you know, it's, you know, we'll have a webinar, we're doing a webinar today, or we'll do kind of a podcast. But my role at the moment is very much to try and get the brand out there, and, you know, do more kind of talks and podcasts and get out there. You know, when I talk as an entrepreneur, I'm telling people about our product as well. But then it's also working on new products. I know I'll probably make this sound better than it is, but I do like tastings of chocolate, you know, all the time, you know, but then sometimes you'll have 20 versions before you get something right. So you're eating chocolate and you're just sick of chocolate. And but once you nail it, then it's good. And then, you know, signing off product, packaging, you know, things for social, you know, we've got our own kind of look and feel and identity of the brand. So it's just signing all of that off to kind of be consistent. And then you've got your kind of mundane tasks as well, like just going through your emails and doing paperwork and getting back to people. So, you know, it's not all like, oh, it's different every day. You know, that's probably what I enjoy the least, you know, having to you know, the paperwork and the repetitive tasks. But we do have kind of exciting things going on. So and then my day is cut a little bit short. I leave at 4 to get the children.
Of course. Just two other questions from our audience, both on finance. So I'm going to deal with the last one first, because the cash flow. So obviously, one of the biggest struggles our question has had is cash flow, and I know many businesses are facing this, particularly, you know, at this particular moment in time. So how have you managed your cash flow, the growth of the business? Because clearly you were in a position where you were growing, you were in the garage, but then you had to go out and get somebody else to do it. That needed cash. How have you managed that cash within the business?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I feel like that's a webinar in itself as well.
Next year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we started the business with £600, and then I asked Whole Foods to pay me up front for that order, because kind of as a small business, and thankfully they did. So they paid us £13,000, which allowed me to, you know, buy the ingredients, buy the blender, everything that I needed to get that order out there. And then we just bootstrapped. We bootstrapped from 2013 to 2017. We kept very lean as a company, and we didn't feel the need to raise. Everything kind of we made, we put back into the business. But then it was only in 2017 we did a raise, because one of our products went into Waitrose and we needed money for working capital. So we did a small round with family and friends. I believe it was about £250,000. So that allowed us to kind of distribute, work on new products, and to get into the supermarkets. But then we raised again in 2019, and that was a larger amount, and that was with, you know, a venture capitalist. And then we raised £2 million. And again, that allowed us to really kind of grow and accelerate the business. But that's not to say that we haven't had struggles in cash flow. I mean, some months, you know, we've had situations where it's like, well, how are we going to pay wages? But, you know, sometimes you do have to delay making payments to suppliers, to wait for money to come in, to wait. It's a cycle. It's just about managing that. And I feel the pain of the cash flow, because that is one of the reasons why businesses fail. and why competitors in our industries have failed, because it's cash flow. It's not the product. The product is great. It's just managing your cash flow.
And Eunice, just before I ask the last question, has said, what about invoice financing? Did you use that at all?
You know what, to be honest, as a young company, we didn't have enough financial history in order to do that. I think we were looking into it quite recently, because we built up, a history within the last 9 years, but in the early days wasn't an option. Couldn't get bank loans, couldn't get overdraft facilities, so it literally was bootstrapping.
I've got a final question from before I ask my final question, but from the audience is Lauren O'Donnell. She's the founder of a plant-based overnight oats breakfast business, Oatsu, which sounds fantastic. She's raising her first SEIS funding round, and she's saying it's been inspiring to follow your journey and seeing you raise via sustainability-focused VC. Now, you mentioned a bit about this, about your fundraising journey and how you went, different stages from bootstrapping to raising money and then VC. I suppose the question from her here is, how's partnering with a VC supported LoveRaw's growth, right? But more importantly, sustainably focused VC. Has that made the difference?
Well, firstly, congratulations on setting all that up and getting kind of as far as you are now. It has made a difference. It gives you validity kind of as a brand, and who you partner up with says a lot about kind of who you are. We went to a lot of other VC meetings, and some are very corporate, and they're just they're very old money, and they don't get what you're trying to do. But and I'll be honest, Blue Horizon was at the top of our list, and thankfully they understood the vision. So they've been really good to kind of partner up with, in terms of distribution as well, because they've got European presence. So, and more often than not, if you do kind of a raise through a VC, you'll have one of their people on your board as well. So it's just accessing that grey hair and that experience as well, which has been kind of beneficial. And then being sustainable has been kind of icing on the cake, really, and again, just like B Corp, it just validates everything.
Okay, very last question. So this has been an amazing journey, and it's been incredible to hear about it today. So looking back to where you were on your coffee table with 600 quid to start the business, is there anything you'd do differently if you could do it all over again?
What would I do differently? Maybe I would have looked for a mentor earlier. I think we just did what we can within ourselves for quite a few years, and made quite a lot of mistakes. So maybe we would have had somebody on board earlier. But you know what? Honestly, I wouldn't, because it's the mistakes that we had and the learnings that we had from 2013 to 2018 that allowed us to enter a category and thrive, have a thriving product within that category, because we made a lot of mistakes. So we just applied everything that we didn't do and applied it to the new category, and that's what's contributed to that success. And if I did anything differently, I wouldn't have made those mistakes. So in that sense, no, I don't think I would.
Well, that's a lesson for everybody, isn't it? Learn from your mistakes, and if something goes wrong, the best thing to do is to learn from it and move forward. So listen, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful to hear your story.
Thank you.
To buy chocolate for Christmas, I know at least one superb vegan chocolate bar company that can help you with that. So, but thank you so much. And let me take the opportunity. I can say this now, it is December. Wish you a Merry Christmas, and best of luck in 2023.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on. And thank you everybody for tuning into the webinar and listening. And, if I can help you in any other way, you can contact me via LinkedIn for any questions, and hopefully we'll meet you at the Startup Awards next year.
Definitely. That's a date. Thanks very much.